People who declined a proposal. Why did you do it? I met him at an art opening. He flew back to his home state a couple days later. We spent a month talking on the phone every day, and he asked me to come with him to Italy while he produced some paintings for a patron's new villa. I started getting everything together to renew my passport and prepare for the trip. He told me he was going to propose to me in Italy. I told him this was too much for me and I wasn't feeling like we were on the same level in the relationship. He lost his crap, called me 50 times through the night, but after the first time I didn't answer anymore. A few years later I found out he had gone to prison statutory debauchery of one of his art students. Because we had been dating for a week. But he loved you. I was only 16, he just turned 20. Also he gave me his ex-girlfriend's ring. Yeah, no. Recycled ring. Recycled goals. Recycled feelings. I was 16 and not pregnant. He said I could go to college later if I still wanted to after we had kids. I was in my first few years of teaching and one of my 9-year-old students brought his sister's play ring to school, got down on one knee when the class was on the field, and he proposed to me. It was very sweet. I declined saying that he was a little young for me. When I was student teaching, I had a student from Ghana who insisted that I, 21 at the time, was far past my prime for marriage. He stole a ring from his mom's jewelry box and said he was willing to make the sacrifice and marry me so that I wasn't old and alone in the world. Kid was 15. Needless to say, I declined. That was a weird phone call home. I thought my ex had anger management issues, and I didn't get along with his mother. He was too attached to her. He later became a violent alcoholic, years after we broke up. He also stole quite a bit of money from me to give to his mother for bills. I was not aware of this until months after the fact. I feel like I dodged a huge bullet there. Forget a huge bullet, it sounds like you dodged a freaking nuke. We were on the verge of a breakup when he asked. We'd been having problems for a few years. His idiot friend told him it was a good idea to propose and that it would make everything magically better. I told him no. We broke up and I moved away for a while. As they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. It was true in our case. We were able to work things out. I moved back and 2 years later, we got married. We've been together for 24 years, have 2 daughters and 1 grandchild. Your story gives me hope. Been dating 10 years, having problems, now broke up. Hopefully we can work it out. I was fresh out of high school and dating a guy in the military that I went to school with. We had been dating about 3 months when he proposed. He was nice, and I could have seen a future with him, but 3 months was just too soon for me, even though we had been friends for quite some time. I told him I wasn't ready and he never spoke to me again. A friend's girlfriend got hammered at a bowling alley, got down on one knee completely seriously and then wet herself while proposing to me. I'm cringing so hard. I was 15, he was 17. I wasn't ready. I liked him a lot but wasn't ready to plan a life with any one person at that age. There was a guy at my high school prom that proposed to his girlfriend in the middle of the dance floor. Low by Flo Rida was playing. She said no. He asked me randomly when on a night out when we weren't even dating, just friends. I thought he was joking, but then he came over the next day to ask what my feelings were. I had to say I didn't think of him that way and it was awkward for a while. Boys in Christian college be like. Well, he proposed as I was breaking up with him, which was awkward, and for some reason he thought it would make me change my mind. Also he had threatened to kill my family the day before, hence the breakup, so there's that. When he asked, my future flashed in front of me and I hated it. He was a good guy and I did love him, but we wanted different things. We had been together for many years but the proposal was still a surprise. I think he proposed to try and save a sinking relationship. That's sad. I'm very afraid of that. All the best to you though. He literally only proposed because I caught him cheating. He thought I would say yes. OMG, of course. I forgive you. Please. Continue to cheat on me after we both sign a legally binding contract. Dude was dumb. Your story reminded me of one of my friends who was cheated on by her boyfriend. Then he also proposed and said if you meet her you'd really like her. She is a lot like you. Like he had the gall to expect her to agree to an immediate threesome and polygamous marriage. got asked in college by a close female friend. We weren't dating. I hadn't ever felt an attraction to her, and I knew she just wanted a husband more than she wanted me, the actual person. 100% yikes. My now wife asked me to marry her. I told her I needed to think about it and eventually told her no. I thought I had held her back. My store was closing down in 2 months before that happened. I turned down a different offer to stay, so I knew I was gonna be without work for some time. She didn't take it well and we didn't speak for a couple years. Eventually though our paths crossed again and we both missed each other tons. One night she tells me, "So Molecule, you make up your mind yet?" I instantly broke down laughing and 2 weeks later we were married. Molecule is kinda a cute pet name for a significant other. I don't hate this. It was our first date. He showed up drunk and called me somebody else's name. I was 29 and had been with my boyfriend 4 years when he proposed. I put scare quotes around it because he didn't actually say anything. He just got down on a knee and showed me a ring. Every time we had talked about marriage, I told him I wasn't ready. Our relationship was solid, but I felt sort of listless in it and like we never really fully connected or had real talks of any depth. I always felt like it was me talking and him listening but not giving much back. We never ever fought. The proposal felt like a microcosm of that dynamic. Instead of having a real talk about what he wanted, which would have been hard, he just bought a ring, a diamond, BTW, which I told him I didn't want but he didn't believe me, to try to sidestep dealing with any difficult feelings or conflicts. We stayed together after that, though. I felt so confused. He seemed so devoted. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. A year and a half later, I found out he had been pursuing other women through much of our relationship, including my best friend, who he was infatuated with. She did not realize, and was having an emotional affair with a woman at his work. He acted like a complete crazy person after this all came to light, and all the resentments he had secretly buried came up, culminating in a letter to my parents where he essentially blamed me for his cheating, based on offenses like my doing my laundry separate from his and not accepting his money, liking to keep our finances separate. I felt validated about the vague unease I had had for so many years and was glad I listened to that intuition that there was something not right, though I wish I had sooner. About a month later, I met my now husband, and we married a year and a half later. I never hesitated with his proposal, even though it was only a few months in. It's been 3 years now and I am so happy with him. We're expecting our first child in November. My mother was engaged to a man while she was in college. The wedding plans were well underway and as the wedding got closer, her fiancé started acting super clingy and possessive. She called it off a few months before getting married. He has lived locally their whole lives so she's run into him a few times. Apparently he's the super jealous type who doesn't let his wives have male friends and he has been married 3 times. My mom definitely dodged a bullet. And you, my friend, dodge non-existence. He was that weird stoner patron that came in just to talk to me even though I wasn't interested. He told me he was the heir to the Commonwealth and should be king after Elizabeth dies, because he had the 3 out of the emblems of the United Kingdom, and once he got the 4th it would secure his position. He would also make airplane noises when I had my attention turned to other tasks. That's a no, Jason. I'm on the opposite side of the story, but it's still a good one. This was years ago. My girlfriend and I were at a friend's wedding, and I got caught up in the romanticism of it and wound up blurting out a proposal at the reception. She said no, and explained that this wasn't the memory of the proposal that she wanted. It felt tacky to tie this important moment to someone else's special day, and she told me to ask her again later, in a different setting. Literally 5 minutes later, they announced that the bride was going to throw the bouquet. All the girls lined up, it went into the air, and sailed straight into my girlfriend's arms. She laughed, turned to me, and said, "That moment is pretty good. Okay, I guess we're engaged." He was P as in Newt and we had only been dating a year. 10 years later he did it properly. We've been married 6 years. I'm British. Yes, we really did date 11 years before he proposed properly. He was worth waiting for. One of my co-workers, who's in her 30s, once said more or less, if he's not ready to get married after 6 months, I'm out. I expect to be pregnant after a year. She did recently get married to a guy she was on again, off again with for, I didn't keep track. He was in the military and he could make more money if he was married. We had just started dating, like barely dating, and I wasn't even slightly into that. He was like, you can come with me to El Paso. Looking back, I think the idea of living in El Paso at that time in my life was so much worse than marrying someone I just started dating. Anyway, things cooled off pretty quickly between us after that. He left for El Paso, then eventually Afghanistan. We fell out of touch. I heard from a mutual friend that he found someone to marry, and they were married for about a year before they divorced. I'm sure there were other reasons, but I heard she freaking hated El Paso, so there's that. I like how El Paso is the real villain in this story XD. I was 16 and about to move to California with my grandma and away from my abusive household. Dude I was dating asked me to marry him and I told him no because I knew moving would give me better opportunities than the crappy small town I was living in. I felt suffocated in that town and needed to work on myself after being abused by my parents. You definitely made the right decision. I was in high school, she had schizophrenia, and I wasn't a lesbian. Also we weren't dating. Or come on, it sounds like you were perfect for each other. Gorgeous 19-year-old girl I worked with. We had been a little flirtatious with each other but were just close work friends. I was under 25. She got knocked up by a guy she wasn't dating seriously. She was opposed to abortion so was planning to keep the baby but wanted to end it with that guy. She took me aside and slowly and seriously proposed marriage with me. Her rationale being that we loved each other even though we were just friends and that I would be a wonderful father, so we should give it a shot. She was sincere, but seeing as her proposal was insane, though oddly tempting, I said no. She married the father of her child shortly after. They're still married, going on 20 years now. Only one child, so I suppose I said no because I was a young man and that wasn't my child. I do wonder what would have happened if I'd said yes, but that would have been insane, right? He asked me, on condition that I change myself into something that he wants, so he can fulfill his dreams. All this while ignoring all my dreams. So, I chose to go forward alone. Good for you. It never works when one person needs the other to change. My husband proposed 1 month into dating. I declined because, 1 month. A year later we moved in together and he proposed and I declined because I wasn't ready. Almost 3 years later and 2 more declined proposals, I said yes on the 4th time. I finally felt ready. We have been married 11 years. In retrospect, his instincts were probably better than mine. Not me, boo it. A co-worker of mine, happily married for a good long while, told me that the only man she dated before her husband was obsessed with her and pursued her even after she broke up with him and had proposed multiple times before and after they broke up. He just had this unhealthy obsession with her for some reason. The last time he proposed to her was the day before her wedding to her husband. She of course turned him down, and he finally moved on and married a different girl. I told her jokingly that he sounded unhinged and she really dodged a bullet there. She went quiet for a moment and then said, well, he killed the woman he did end up marrying. Holy Jesus, that went from 50 to infinity. Not me, but my dad. Back when he was 18 he'd go to this drive-in after work with his work friends for dinner. There was a waitress there he flirted with but never dated. After about 4 years when he was 22, he asked her to marry him. She said no, couldn't see them having a future together. He said, alright, I'll never ask you again. A few years later the place closed down. Then another 10 years or so passed. When he was 36 he ran into her at a McDonald's while she was babysitting someone else's kids. He thought they were hers at first. They got to know each other again, then started dating. 2 years later she felt he was the one but he never asked her to marry him. So instead she asked him and he and my mom have been married for 43 years now. I don't know how I didn't see that coming. I was scared and selfish. As a veteran, they were suffering from severe PTSD, had already attempted suicide, and were using drugs to self-medicate. As much as I loved and adored him, and still do, I knew there were things I wanted for myself and it wouldn't be possible if I had to be the caretaker all the time. If I had said yes, I would be a widow now. I know I did the right thing for me, but I don't feel like I did right by them. I wish I could have been stronger. It was strong of you to say no. You can't fix someone's pain and problems for them. They have their journey and you have yours. What they did is not your responsibility. You did the right thing. He was a stranger on the bus to the city. He said he'd give me an entire closet of clothing if I married him. ID sign clause, he said. He wanted a green card. I asked why not money. He said he didn't have any. I told him no thanks. He said okay, looked forward at the seat ahead and sighed. Then immediately swiveled his head back at me. Have asked if I had any sisters. Nope. Another sigh. This one made me laugh. I proposed to my boyfriend of 3 years. He told me he loved me but just wasn't ready because his parents had a really bad marriage and frankly, he didn't know if he could ever get married. I cried my eyes out and he held me, but he was gently adamant. I accepted after a while that we wouldn't get married and to be happy that we were together and loved each other. 2 years later he proposed to me. Married 12 years so far. I can't imagine the amount of unconditional love and patience that you both had, and I'm sure still have towards one another to work through those sorts of reservations. I know several people who refuse to get married because of how their parents' marriage affected them. It's lovely to see an example of two people caring for each other deeply enough to face that. Best to you both. I was asked by a man I wasn't dating. He offered to buy me a beach house and said I'd be a great stepmom to his 8-year-old daughter. I declined for several reasons. 1. I was dating someone else. 2. I was 18 and he was 32. 3. He had just been dumped. 4. He was drunk. It was a serious offer, I found out later. I didn't take him up on it and haven't talked to him since. He stopped contacting me. Not me, but my hairdresser and I were talking about her recent breakup the other day. She had been dating her BF for 7 years. He never proposed, so she broke up with him. Didn't want to waste her time. As she was breaking up with him, he proposed. She said no. You have been visited by the safety doggo. Subscribe and you will be safe from all danger for the next 24 hours. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.